welcome, I'm Izzy at Minerva. In today's video, we're going to be looking at how to create a very simple pair of leggings, an absolute classic here. And I'm really excited today because we're going to be using some of our Minerva exclusive legging activewear fabric. It's going to look amazing. So let's get straight on into it. As you follow along with the video today, you're going to need your standard pattern drafting tools, and those are listed next to me here. This video relies on you having your very own stretch jersey trouser block. If you've not got one, you can just follow a previous video that I filmed on our Minerva YouTube channel, where you can watch how to measure your body accurately and draw up your own bespoke block. So do check out that video if you want to follow along today. On the screen today, you're going to be seeing my trouser block, and that will look different to yours because it is bespoke. So don't worry if it looks a little bit different. The techniques I'm going to show you today, you can do on your own block at home, no problem. And don't forget, as we're drafting today, jersey is stretchy, which means that depending on the type of fabric that you choose to make this pair of leggings out of, you may need to give yourself less ease or more ease depending on the amount of stretch that your fabric has. So don't be disheartened if the first time you draft it up it's way too baggy or it's way too tight. That might be simply because the fabric that you've chosen doesn't have enough stretch or has too much stretch. If there's too much stretch, obviously you can just trim down the seam allowances and make it all tighter, or potentially if it's too tight you need to pick a fabric with more stretch. The fabric that I've picked today and I'm going to use in our demo is our Minerva exclusive activewear fabric. Now this fabric has 60% stretch in both directions, so it's super stretchy, and the block that I've drawn has actually assumed only about 40% stretch. So the very first thing that I'm going to do to my block is I'm actually going to shrink it down a little bit and make it a little bit tighter so that when I sew up my actual fabric, it can stretch nicely over my body to create the shape that I want. So the very first thing that I'm going to do to my back and to my front is I'm just going to reduce it widthwise by 90%. I don't want to overdo it because I can always bring my seam in a little bit more if I want to. Measure the length of the pattern piece at your knee and tap that into your calculator. Times that by 0.1 this time and divide that answer by 2. So I just need to reduce my knee seam by 7 mil on either side, and then that will reduce the width at my knee by 90%. Let's do the same up at the crotch up here. It's currently 27, I'm going to times that by 0.1, which tells me the amount I need to reduce the block by, and then divide it by 2 so I can take it off both sides. So it's 1.3 centimetres. And at the hip line up here, just repeat that process. So for me it's 23, times by 0.1, divide it by 2, and it's 1.1 centimetres that I want to reduce that by. And finally, the same up at the waist. Okay, so just draw in your new line, joining sort of all those dots together effectively. Continue this line straight down from the knee all the way down to your floor length. At this point over here, reduce it by 0.7 or the same that you reduced it by there. Obviously it's on a nice little curve, so we want to reduce it by the same amount. Okay, once you've done that for the trouser front, just repeat that whole process for the back. Brilliant, and then just cut away that volume, just like that. Okay, so with my leggings, I want the front panel, as you can see in the image next to me here, to be sort of smooth across the tummy and smooth across the back, and then to have that seam that goes underneath the crotch. So I'm actually going to create a bit of a yoke on the top of the leggings. Let's do that together. Okay, working from the hip line, I'm going to mark a point that is 8 centimetres above the hip on the front and also on the back. Okay, so they're going to tie in together. And then all I'm going to do is just sort of find a bit of a soft curve really. I think I'm going to send it down to the hip line as well, just to keep things really nice and consistent. And the same on the back. Just going to add a little notch halfway along, so I've got a nice little reference on the front and a little double notch on the back. Just label the centre front and the centre back, and then just cut those pattern pieces off. Okay, so at the top of that yoke, I'm going to add like a small amount of elastic just to really hold the leggings in place up at the top. So my elastic is 2 centimeters wide, so I'm going to create a bit of a fold over casing that's 2 centimeters. So I'm just going to draw a line parallel to the top of the waist that is 2.5 centimeters above the waistline. I'm going to do that for the back and then also for the front. I've just added that 5 millimeters of ease into the casing just to allow the elastic to sort of wiggle around into it comfortably. Okay, and then just extend up the centre back line and the centre front. And at the waist seam here, we just want to angle it out by approximately the same amount. Excellent, then just trim off all the excess that's not required. Excellent. Okay, so we've done our yoke. We just need to finish our trouser legs next. So very simply, you're going to grab the front, just shift it so that it lines up beautifully with the back. Now, you will notice that we have a little gap up here. That's absolutely fine. You could just ignore that if it's really small, or what I'm going to do in this demo is show you how to create a little dart just so that you know the technique, because if your hip to waist proportion and ratio, if your waist is significantly smaller than your hips, you're going to have quite a big gap at that point. So let's talk you through how to do that. Let's start off with the trouser leg. Now with the hem down at the bottom, I'm just going to add 1.5 centimeters because I'm just going to overlock it and turn it up. I want to keep it really stretchy at the bottom. I don't want to, because I need to be able to get my ankle and my foot into it. Okay, so our grain line just follows that center sort of side seam of the leg, running perpendicular to the knee line. This is our leggings pattern piece. We're going to cut 2. We've only got 1 pattern piece for the front and the back. So what might be really helpful here is just to annotate and say this is the front and this is the back over here, just so you know. Great. We also need to add our notches in. So we've got 2 little notches here and here on that side, which also help us know that's the back, and 1 over here at the front. And then where these 2 tied together, it might just be really helpful just to add a little notch at the knee point down here. They're going to tie in together beautifully. Okay, let's move on to our front yoke. And for this one, the grain line follows the centre front, which is going to be cut on the fold. And we're just going to cut 1 of these pattern pieces. Don't forget to add your little notch at this point. Moving on to the back yoke. The back is really the same as the front, as in we're going to place it on the fold along the centre back, and the grain line runs parallel to the centre back. Don't forget just to add those double little notches at the bottom there. And of course, the final thing we want to do is just to draw in our dart. Now I'm going to simplify this dart and draw it from the waist or from the yoke just straight down to the hip in a nice straight line. And that's all it is. Oh, fantastic. Okay, let's cut out our pattern pieces now that we've spent time adding our seam allowances. Let's go cut it out of fabric and see what it looks like. Okay, so we've got our trouser leg here, and the very first thing I'm going to do is just prepare by pinning and then sewing the little side dart that we've got here. Great, and that's just giving us a really nice little curve around down to sort of the hip area. You can press that towards the back, you know where the back is because you've got a double notch, then just repeat that for the other trouser leg. Okay, at this point I'm going to put 1 trouser leg over the other trouser leg with right sides together. Then I'm just going to pin this little curve here together, and this is the front crotch curve, and I'm going to do the same for the back over here, just pinning that little curve in place. We're just going to sew those 2 little curves now using our 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, and of course we're using a stretch stitch, which is our lightning bolt stitch, or we're going to use a really narrow little zigzag stitch, or of course you can use stretchy thread and just do a straight stitch. Brilliant. So once you've sewn and overlocked those 2 little curves, what we're going to do now is just open up the trouser leg and effectively join it up here at the crotch seam. So just line up that seam really nicely and neatly. And what you will find is that if you cross the seam over, so that on one side the seam allowance is pushed one way and on the other side it's pushed the other way, you will get a slightly sort of flatter finish. And then all we're going to do is just pin the rest of the trouser leg together. We've got a couple of notches that will act as our guide. And we're just going to go from one ankle all the way up the inner seam and up to the crotch and then back down to the other ankle on the other side of the leg. A really nice long seam to be doing. Okay, once you've pinned all of that, we're just going to sew it in place and then overlock it to finish it nicely. Brilliant. And so now, as you can see, we've got two little trouser legs all sorted. So we just need to add this like top yoke onto the top now. So let's do that together. Okay, so we've got our front yoke and our back yoke. The front yoke has one little notch here. The back yoke has two little notches on this side. Open up the back and then just pop the front on top. Oh, this way up, right sides together. And then we're just going to pin those side seams together. Once you've pinned one side, let's just repeat that for the other side. And once they're pinned, we're just going to sew them and overlock them in place. Okay, so next we're going to attach the yoke to the trouser legs. We're going to do this right sides together and it's going to be along this seam here and this seam here. I've got the front of my yoke facing forward. I've got a little notch, one notch here, and I've got my front of my trouser legs with my one single notch there. So I'm just going to very carefully pop one inside the other, and then the first thing I'm going to do is line up the bottom point with that central seam allowance of the centre front. Pin that in place. And then just pin that little notch in place. And then you've also got a nice little reference here where your dart is, which we're going to push towards the back, and your side seam of your yoke. Lovely. So we've got some nice little references there. Just continue to pin all the way around using the little notches and side seams as a guide. The next thing we want to do is to fold and iron the top of the waistband down, wrong sides together, by 1.5 centimetres. If you remember, we added an extra bit for casing for our elastic, and then we also added a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance to the top of that. So effectively we're going to tuck our 1.5 centimetre seam allowance down and then fold it over again, and our elastic is just going to sit really nicely and snugly in that casing. So we're going to sew a line of stitches down along the folded edge here. So what we want to do now is actually fold this under down again by 2.5 centimetres. So let's get this really nice and accurate and just start to pin it in place. Brilliant. Once you've pinned that casing down, what we want to do is to just mark with like a little double pin where we're going to start and where we're going to stop, or where we're going to stop more likely, because we want to leave a little gap in our casing so we can fit our elastic in and through. So I'm going to start sewing here, sew all the way around and stop when I hit my double pin to leave a little gap right there. Excellent, so we've got this little gap up here. I'm going to put a safety pin through one end of my elastic. I'm actually going to pop it into the seam allowance down here. There's plenty of space for it. And then I'm going to pop another safety pin at the top, the other end. And then we're literally just going to thread it through the casing. So keeping that all nice and straight. And pop that into one end and just ease it into the casing beautifully. Brilliant. So once you've got the elastic all the way through, just check that it's all nice and straight, that it's sitting in the casing straight, that it's not kind of wrapped around. Then at this point, I would just overlap the elastic ends by 1.5 centimetres and then just go and try that on. Make sure you're happy with the elastic, so make sure it's all kind of like tucked in place and it's all good, and it's extending the whole width of the elastic there. And then also, just while you're there, check the length of the hem, bearing in mind it'll be 1.5 centimetres shorter than it is currently. Oh, great. So I've just tried these on and they fit really nicely. I'm really happy with them, but I just needed to reduce the amount of elastic a little bit. So I know how much I want to reduce that by. So I'm going to cut that off now and then sew it together. Okay, just like that. And then just tuck it all into the casing and then just finish sewing that bit of the casing down. Now what you may find with your elastic is that it does kind of like bunch up or roll over because the fabric is so slippery. So what you might want to do is just sew a line of zigzag stitches all the way along the centre of the elastic just to hold it in place so it doesn't keep turning over all the time. That's a very optional step if you'd like to do it. It's up to you. Great, okay, so the final thing we want to do is just to turn up our hem. I'm just going to overlock the hem at the bottom and then turn it up by 1.5 centimetres. Okay, once you've finished the edges, however you'd like to, then we're just going to fold it over by 1.5 centimetres and sew a little line of stitches as close to the finished edge as possible. So this is our gorgeous Minerva exclusive Paint Parade glossy activewear made of lycra stretch knit fabric, and this is the impression fabric that we've picked. This is made out of 85% polyester, 15% elastane, and that gives it an incredible 60% stretch both width and length ways. A really nice activewear fabric. And as you can see, that yoke detail just looks really nice as it's blending into the trouser leg, and the simplicity of the creation of that trouser leg just makes it stretch really nicely all the way around the legs. Oh, brilliant. I can't wait to go running in these. I think these are going to feel and look great. Thanks for joining me this week. We have looked at how to sort of cinch in the block even more to create a really tight fitted pair of leggings. Next week, we're going to do the complete opposite, and we're going to look at making a beautiful pair of like baggy harem style yoga pants, which is going to be really fun and complete opposite of what we've been doing today. So until then, have a lovely week and I'll see you next time.